You sound so convincing.
But how do you argue with this?
But here's the part. You sound so convincing. If your ideas are so perfect the way you sell them, how come others are not implementing it? You can't tell me it's because, well, the way the world has ruled is the people of power are so power hungry that they eventually go up there and all of them unite and they don't want to do anything and they're not willing to give up their powers and their privileges. And this is why the idea of anarchy has never been, because I get it and these other guys don't, right? So if it's so perfect the way you do it,
I didn't say perfect.
If it's as good as the way you sell it,
right,
why aren't smart people out there implementing it?
Patrick Bet David brought Michael Malice onto the PBD podcast here and the Valuetainment YouTube channel, and they had a bit of a disagreement that did get pretty heated between Patrick Bet David and Michael Malice here whenever they're talking about capitalism and anarchy and things such as that. Patrick Bet David and Michael Malice disagreed quite a bit. And like I said, things got a bit heated. Let's get into this clip here where Patrick Bet David had to shut down Michael Malice because of the things that he was saying about capitalism, anarchy, and just the progress that we are or aren't making in America in terms of the culture. Let's get into this clip here.
Such as city parks at night, alleys, the subways. When you have, there's no incentive for a government monopoly to provide its service. And in fact, the worse it provides its service, the more taxes the politicians are there in a position to demand that the populace pay in, because they could say, look, we have a problem. We need more of this. We need more of that. So when things are provided privately, and you at hotels is another good example. Everyone in a hotel is not native to the area where they're in. It's still safer in a hotel than in public housing where everyone actually lives there and you know who lives there.
You sound so convincing.
But how do you argue with this?
But here's the part. You sound so convincing. If your ideas are so perfect the way you sell them, how come others are not implementing it? You can't tell me it's because, well, the way the world has ruled is the people of power are so power hungry that they eventually go up there and all of them unite and they don't want to do anything and they're not willing to give up their powers and their privileges. And this is why the idea of anarchy has never been, because I get it and these other guys don't, right? So if it's so perfect the way you do it,
I didn't say perfect.
If it's as good as the way you sell it,
right,
why aren't smart people out there implementing it?
Because the government co-opts smart people. The whole point of our university system is to train the next generation of elite.
Maybe 80%.
Do you want to hear my answer?
Maybe 80%.
Okay. There's a couple of things. First of all, I think all of us would agree here that alcohol prohibition was a bad idea, which did not, I don't think at all decrease the amount of alcohol consumption in this country, or maybe marginally, but vastly increased the amount of crime in this country. How was it that alcohol prohibition was such a popular idea that it got 2/3 of the Congress and was it 3/4 of the states to ratify it? Because there's very many examples. To broader speaking, politics are non-rational. There's an entire system in place where people will vote for their tribe as opposed to the other tribe and not really care if any of their ideas or views are implemented, just so long as their team wins. And this is something we're taught. If you ask conservatives, why are you voting for Dr. Oz? He supported Jussie Smollett. He supported trans kids. They're going to say, well, what do you want me to do? Vote for Fetterman? These are my only options. So we're trained since kids that your only options are voting, and the two choices are Republican or Democrat.
No, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with what you just said.
And also one more thing, just sorry, this is very key, because Noam Chomsky, who's also an anarchist, a prominent linguist as well, he has this great quote. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher the exact wording. He goes, the way to control a society is to have strictly delineated terms of argument, but have very vigorous debate between those terms. So Jimmy Dore, I don't know if you ever had him on the show, just great dude.
I'm surprised that Noam said that, and when I asked him if he would ever debate Thomas Sowell, he avoided it.
Well, I'm not surprised. That's right.
Yeah, I'm very surprised he didn't want to talk to Thomas Sowell.
You see, I like what Patrick Bet David, and I kind of agree with what Michael Malice is saying too, in theory, right? There's a big problem with a lot of these personalities out there that what they say sounds really good and it riles up their audience, and then they start, like, their audience starts to think, yeah, that sounds amazing, like anarchy, that sounds amazing, right? That sounds way better than what we have currently. And like, the same thing for libertarianism. I'm not saying that libertarianism isn't great and better what we have right now. I'm just saying that libertarianism and libertarian, like actual diehard, like true libertarians out there that have their own YouTube channel. Like Dave Smith, for example, he really has a cult following because those types of ideas, it makes people feel things. And it's always like positive things. Like, yeah, that would be way better than what we have currently. The problem is if we actually went fully in that direction, there would probably be massive problems that are a lot bigger than the problems that we face today. You know, if we went full libertarianism, so a completely decentralized government, like there's no centralized government. And I'm not going to pretend like I know every single talking point of libertarians, but let's just say that everything was privatized, right? Like the government doesn't control anything. The government doesn't control police departments. The government doesn't make the roads and maintain the roads and anything like that. There would be massive problems. You know, there would be problems with corruption inside of police departments. I know that there already is, but there would probably be bigger corruption within police departments because then they'd be private, right? So whoever owns it, whatever they think should go, that's what will go, versus, you know, people voting on, you know, what, you get the picture, right? Then the roads thing that everybody always brings up. So I'm just saying that these ideas sound great in theory. They're almost never that perfect in practice when you actually put them into practice, but they sound really good on paper whenever you say them on these shows. So people, whenever we don't have anarchy, right? If Michael Malice goes on and he explains, hey, here's why anarchy would be way better. It's provocative. And it also sounds way better than what we have currently because he's not talking about any of the problems with it. But what Patrick Bet-David is about to describe and make Michael Malice and the audience of the PBD podcast here understand is that we need some laws, right? Along with capitalism to make things work. We need some laws, right? We need some sort of regulations. And I wasn't trying to go at Dave Smith at all right there. I actually love Dave Smith and I agree with like basically everything that the man says, especially when it comes to like the culture and you know, geopolitics and things like that. I'm just saying there's really no perfect way of governing. Even though that these people can make things sound perfect, you know, like Michael Malice can make anarchy sound perfect and Dave Smith can make, you know, libertarianism sound perfect. There's really no perfect way of governing. And I think we probably have one of the best ways right now. And now look, personally, I wish we would have more of a decentralized government. I wish it wouldn't be as centralized as it is, but I do think we need some form of government, right? Not everything should be private. I think a healthy medium, and maybe this is the libertarian way. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. I might sound like an idiot right now, but I think a perfect compromise would be instead of, I think abolish the centralized government in Washington, D.C., but each state should have its own centralized government. So each state should be able to make their own laws from scratch. And that way we still have centralized government. We still have a state government that is responsible for the roads inside of the state. We have a state government that's responsible for the police departments and the fire departments and everything like that within the states. But we don't have a centralized government in Washington, D.C. that controls all the states. That's what I think would be a healthy medium. I think that would improve things a lot without going too far the other way where everything is private.
Jimmy was on 2 weeks ago.
Jimmy's great, but he gave an example of this. Like if you watch like The View, the choices are going to be, can I curse?
Yeah.
Should we bomb the shit out of Syria or should we bomb the fucking shit out of Syria, right? We're always presented with a very limited range of options and then you think, okay, I either have CNN or Fox, but that's basically where the Overton window lies. So any ideas that are a radical threat to the governing structure are going to be marginalized and you're going to be told, until very recently when you had independent venues like this, that you're crazy or this is impossible or it'll never happen. And for many people, still to this day, there's a huge social cost in adopting an ideology that's regarded as marginal or unpopular.
I don't know about that.
You don't think it's a social cost?
No, okay. So what I think you're doing is super necessary is because you're making people think, right? You're making people think and say, okay, he sounds convincing. He sounds very confident. Doesn't necessarily mean you're right, but it's good the fact that we're having this discourse, right? And the audience can be like, well, Pat, he made a good point. You don't know what you're talking about. You need to do your research on this, but you got to go read this. Okay, well, Michael, Patrick asked that question. You didn't really give the right answer. Then great. Let them decide on what they want to do. But here's the part. So what I think has happened the last few years is we've shown with this tool, we got right now, 9,100 people live watching. By the time this is going to be done within a 2-hour period, 100,000 people will watch it, 24 hours, all the clips together. Say we got 4 or 5 million people that watch this to get this argument. Okay. We didn't have this 20 years ago.
Correct.
Right? So 20 years ago, Michael Malice, you would have had to gone the traditional way of maybe instead of sleeping 9 hours, you would have slept in 7.5 hours to make it, because a tool like this isn't out there to market it. So it would have been much harder for a guy like you to make it to where you are today, right? Today, the tools allow you to live the life that you've always dreamt about living, which is phenomenal.
Yes.
However, here's what I think is this tool is given. And you may disagree. If 20 years ago, somebody said, guys, in 20 years, trans people are going to be accepted. Men are going to be transitioning into...
if you enjoy content like this, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out a ton. Let's get back to the video.
Women and competing, and the Democratic Party, who's always been, they claim they're for women, they're feminists, they're going to be okay with men saying they're women, competing against women, beating records, and they're going to be cornered to... And trans, they're going to be all over the place. And Drew Barrymore is going to bring a person in, Dylan, and she's going to get on her knees in front of him and say, I totally understand your pain. That'll never happen. I'm telling you, that's what's going to happen. But let me tell you what else is going to happen. What's that? You know, these CNN, the Fox, all these guys, yeah, what about them? They're going to get crushed by this guy named Joe. What are you talking about? Just regular Joe? It's just a regular Joe. He's not a regular Joe. I'm telling you, CNN and Fox are going to be crushed by a guy named Joe. What does this guy do? Is he a billionaire? Does he have more money than them? No. He just talks and makes people think and brings different people on. So what has he done? Do you know marijuana that is illegal today? Yeah. That guy's going to make people think marijuana is not a big deal. And matter of fact, he's going to bring the richest guy in the world on, and that guy's going to smoke weed. And then he's going to, the next day, the market's going to come after him, but now smoking weed is no longer what it was before. Get the hell out of here, Michael. You're out of your mind. That'll never happen in America, conservative. No, it is. It is. I'm telling you. And you're not even going to think twice. Last week, I'm in Bahamas 3-4 days ago. The other day, I'm in a game. We'll walk by my kids. What is that smell? It's what is that animal that smells like weed? It's a
skunk.
Skunk. Oh, that's what a skunk smells like?
You didn't know?
Yeah, that's a skunk. I'm like, oh, really? Yeah, it's a skunk, son. That's what it is. Oh, okay, cool. That's not skunk, man. It's like 5 minutes later, Dylan's smiling. I'm like, no wonder this guy's so happy right now. So no one cares about smoking weed today. 20 years ago, it was crazy. So this is the point I'm trying to make to you, Michael, and take this personally. I want you to get upset.
I'm not going to get upset.
And say, screw you, Pat.
I'm not going to say that.
Okay, that's good. Here's what I would say. If the last 20 years, some of the craziest, wackiest ideas are now being talked about, and some of the things that the conservatives would have never accepted are now saying, it's just weed. Maybe your argument isn't that good, or maybe you're just not good at presenting your argument for other people to pick it up. Because if there's ever been a time to sell your philosophies to be received by millions of people around the world, now is the time. How come there's not been that kind of momentum yet?
That's a great point by Patrick Bet David right there. And look, I see both sides of this, because what Michael Malice said, there is somewhat of a social risk, a risk socially whenever you're trying to present an idea that's not super popular. So if you're trying to say, hey, there's another way that's not capitalism or socialism, you know, it's not either one of the popular ideas. There is a social risk to that, right? And there's a social risk to a lot of things that people do. There's a lot of social risk to what Candace Owens was saying while she was at the Daily Wire, you know, and there was a social risk to, you know, what a lot of people say. There's a social risk to Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur kind of moving away from the left wing a little bit. But the reality is, there's going to be people, there's enough people with enough open-mindedness to where if you're not a complete whack job and you know how to present ideas correctly, you'll be okay, right? Financially, you'll keep your following. Candace Owens proved that, Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur proved that, and all the other people who have, you know, Dave Rubin and, you know, all these people who have left the left wing or left the right wing and went left wing, whatever, you know, you'll be okay. And Michael Malice has proven it. There's a lot of people who support Michael Malice. So, yeah, I mean, he'll be fine. The social risk comes in, I think, whenever you start to offend certain groups of people, and then you could get taken off certain platforms. In terms of like your following, losing your following or anything like that, you'll be fine. But also, Patrick Bet David is completely correct in that so many different ideas we've made progress on where things that we thought were absolutely insane are now happening today. And some of it is progress in your eyes, and some of it is the downfall of America and Western society, like the Drew Barrymore and Dylan Mulvaney clip that Patrick Bet-David's talking about right there is kind of, it's not progress at all. But yeah, a lot of these things are progress, like Joe Rogan taking down a lot of the mainstream media and surpassing them. That's definitely progress, And if your ideas are still not mainstream and still not looked at as serious, where your audience might, but in terms of they're not seriously being considered to change from the two-party system of Republican and Democrat to whatever it is you're proposing, having a third party being the Libertarian Party. And I understand that exists, but being a serious candidate to win, maybe your ideas are just not that good. That could be the case. Or that could be a very NPC way of looking at things where you're thinking, oh, because something is popular, therefore it must be correct or more correct than the other ways that are less popular. That could also be the argument, where maybe you're looking at things as a bit of an NPC, because popularity doesn't always mean that it's correct. And I can't stand when people look at things that way. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what you guys think in the comments. I like the discussion here between Patrick Bet-David and Michael Malice. I'm curious to see what you guys think. Who do you think won this debate between Patrick Bet-David and Michael Malice here? Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this whole PBD versus Michael Malice clip here on the PBD podcast and the Valuetainment YouTube channel.